Late evening at the healer house. The rain outside has stopped, with only occasional drops falling from the roof. Bluey can't sleep. She quietly gets out of bed, her paws softly padding on the rug. An eerie silence hangs in the house, broken only by the faint creaking of the old wooden floorboards. In the hallway, Bluey freezes. A tall, unnatural figure looms in the dim light. A wooden body, angular limbs. On a disproportionately large head are enormous, unmoving eyes staring into the void. A wide, frightening grin is fixed on its wooden face. In one wooden hand, the figure clutches an elongated object, resembling a baseball bat dragging its handle along the floor. Bluey's heart pounds with terror. She tries to call for Mum or Dad, but her voice seems to catch in her throat, unable to escape. The wooden head slowly turns, and the empty black pupils of its huge eyes lock onto her, piercing the darkness. A quiet scraping sound echoes, as if two dry pieces of wood are rubbing against each other. The figure begins to move slowly, jerkily towards the frozen Bluey, dragging the heavy bat which thuds dully against the floor. Bluey backs away, pressing herself against the wall. She tries to breathe, but the air feels thick in her lungs. The wooden figure approaches, and now Bluey can see every crack on its wooden face, every jagged edge of its fixed smile. The scent of old wood and dampness emanates from it. The figure stops directly in front of Bluey, towering over her with its unnatural height. From its unmoving lips comes a strange guttural sound, devoid of any inflection. Tung Sahur. Bluey flinches and recoils, feeling an icy dread grip her entire body. The wooden hand slowly raises the bat, its shadow sliding ominously across the wall. At that moment, a sleepy Bingo appears in the hallway, rubbing her eyes groggily with her paws. She looks at the strange wooden guest with confusion. "Bluey, who's that?" she whispers, yawning. The wooden figure slowly turns its enormous empty eyes towards little Bingo and repeats the strange incantation. Tung Sahur. Suddenly, the light in the hallway begins to flicker, casting jerky shadows on the walls. A persistent, monotonous rhythm echoes throughout the house, like the dull thudding of a wooden bat against the floor. Tung, tung, tung. Mum and Dad sleep soundly, oblivious to the unfolding nightmare. It seems that only the frightened Bluey and Bingo can hear and see this terrifying night visitor and the growing ominous noise. The wooden figure takes a slow, creaking step towards Bingo, its wooden legs making a chilling scraping sound on the floor. Bluey, gathering the last of her courage, lunges forward, trying to shield her sister with her body. The wooden figure raises the bat high above little Bingo's head. At that moment, the image momentarily distorts. The colors fade and the outlines blur, as if one's vision is losing focus from sheer terror. The final scene shows the dark, empty hallway. Only the monotonous rhythmic thudding like the sound of a wooden bat echoes in the silence, and a quiet, sinister whisper repeating the strange words. Tung Sahur. Then a complete oppressive silence descends. The screen slowly fades to absolute black. There's a Bluey episode almost no one talks about, not because it's forgotten, but because those who have seen it wish they could forget. It's called The Closet Guest, and according to rumors it aired only once in the middle of the night, before vanishing completely. No official records, only fragments, and those who still remember what they saw. It started normally the way any Bluey episode would. Bluey and Bingo were laughing, throwing toys around their room. The golden light of sunset spilled lazily across the walls. But the camera lingered, just a little too long. On the corners where the light didn't reach, on the closet, on the door that wasn't fully shut. At one point, Bingo joked, "Let's play hide and seek, I'll hide someone in the closet." She grabbed an old stuffed toy, tossed it inside and closed the door. When they finished playing, the closet door was open again, the toy was gone, and something subtle had changed. Later that night, Bluey woke up. A soft, slow creak echoed through the room. She turned her head, heart pounding a little faster. The closet door was moving, opening wider, by itself. Bluey told herself it was just the wind, pulled the blanket over her head, and tried to pretend she hadn't seen it. The next morning she told Bingo. Bingo just laughed and said, "Maybe someone lives there now." All day Bluey felt it, that weight, that pressure, the feeling that something, or someone, was watching her. From the hallway, from the shadows, from the closet. She asked her parents if there could be a draft. Bandit smiled, ruffled her ears and said, Old house, sweetheart. Houses creak, that's all. But that night the noises grew louder. Bluey woke again, this time to breathing, deep, slow. Wrong. It wasn't Bingo, it wasn't Mom or Dad. It came from the closet. The door was wide open now, and deep in the darkness, something caught the light. Two small glinting dots, like eyes. Too low to belong to an adult, too high to be a toy. Bluey froze under her blanket, listened. The breathing grew closer, soft footsteps across the floor. A pause, and then a voice, strange, a little too high, a little too familiar. It whispered, "Don't be afraid, let's play." In the morning, Bluey tried to tell her parents. They just smiled too tightly and said it must have been a bad dream. No one mentioned it again. But over the next few days, Bluey changed. She spoke less, smiled less, stopped leaving her room unless she was called. And every time she sat down, her eyes, wide and unblinking, and stayed locked onto the closet door. In the last part of the episode, the family sat around the breakfast table. Normal conversation, normal laughter. But the camera ignored them. It pushed closer to Bluey. She sat perfectly still, her food untouched, her gaze empty. And just behind her at the very end of the hallway, the closet door. And for a fraction of a second, a tall crooked shadow slipped across it. The final scene showed Bluey's bedroom again. Nighttime, silent. Bingo slept peacefully. But Bluey sat across from the open closet staring deep into the void. And she whispered, "Now it's my turn to hide." The camera pulled back, slowly. The window behind them showed the dark street outside, still, abandoned. No movement, no sound. Just the faint, almost imperceptible creak of a door opening wider. And then, blackness, total silence. There's a Bluey episode almost no one remembers. Or maybe they choose not to. It's called The Girl Behind the Glass. Some say it aired once late at night and then disappeared forever. No records. Only rumors and those who still remember what they saw. It started like any normal day. Bluey and Bingo were playing inside their house. The weather was cloudy. Gray light filled the rooms. Everything looked a little washed out. Bingo suggested a new game. "Let's play mirror match." She pointed to the large window facing the backyard. "You copy me and I copy you." They both giggled and pressed their noses against the glass. At first it was innocent fun. They raised their arms, twirled around, made silly faces. The reflections followed just as they should, but then something shifted. Bluey raised her right arm, Bingo raised her left like a mirror would. But the Bingo in the window didn't move, it just stood still, frozen. Bluey laughed nervously, thinking it was part of the game. She waved again. The Bingo in the glass tilted its head, not copying, just different. The real Bingo tugged at Bluey's paw. "I'm tired, let's play something else." She skipped away from the window. Bluey stayed, staring at the frozen reflection. Something about the eyes. They were too wide. The smile stretched just a little too much. That night things got worse. Bluey woke to tapping, soft rhythmic taps against the glass. She sat up in bed. The backyard window was across the room, barely visible in the moonlight. But she saw her Bingo, standing outside, pressing her face against the glass. Only it wasn't Bingo. The real Bingo was asleep, tucked safely in bed. Bluey whispered, afraid to make a sound. The figure outside smiled. It wasn't a kind smile, it was stretched. Wrong. Slowly, it lifted its hand and tapped once more against the glass. In the morning, Bluey told her parents. They smiled nervously and said she must have had a bad dream. They pulled the curtains tighter, locked the windows. But every night Bluey heard it, the tapping. And every night if she dared to look, there she was. The other Bingo, moving on her own, scraping her hands down the glass, mouthing silent words Bluey couldn't understand. Sometimes she would press her palm flat against the window. Sometimes she would just stand and tilt her head, watching. The last night Bluey woke not to tapping but to breathing, slow, wet, heavy. The window was open, curtains fluttered against the cold air. Bluey didn't want to look, but something inside her did. She turned her head ever so slowly. And there, sitting at the end of her bed, was Bingo, or what looked like Bingo. The real Bingo slept soundly, back turned to the horror. The thing at the end of the bed smiled, and in the softest, sweetest voice it whispered, "Your turn to follow me now." The screen faded to black. No ending scene, no music, no laughter. Just the long, soft sound of something dragging across glass. Then, silence. There's a lost Bluey episode known to very few. It's called The Sandbox. They say it aired once very early in the morning when almost no one was watching. Then it disappeared, as if it had never existed. The episode started normally. Bluey and Bingo were playing at the park. It was a bright, quiet afternoon. Birds sang softly in the background. Everything felt normal, almost too normal. Bingo found a sandbox tucked away in a far corner, a place they'd never noticed before. It looked old, forgotten. The sand inside was darker, almost gray. Bingo jumped in first. She laughed, digging with her paws. Bluey joined her, smiling. But when she dug deeper, her paw touched something hard, a wooden board, buried just beneath the surface. They brushed the sand away, revealing a trapdoor, old, rotten, with a rusty handle. Bingo giggled and pulled it open. Cold air rushed out from below, a narrow hole, leading into darkness. Bluey hesitated. Bingo, more curious, lowered herself into the hole. Her voice echoed from below. "It's just a tunnel, come on!" Bluey followed. The tunnel sloped down deeper and deeper. Their giggles faded, swallowed by the earth. The walls were dirt, packed and crumbling, and soon there were doors, wooden doors, each one slightly ajar. Behind some, empty rooms. Behind others, shadows that moved just out of sight. The further they went, the more the tunnels branched out, twisting, splitting, leading nowhere. Or maybe somewhere they shouldn't go. Bluey called for Bingo. No answer, only a hollow, wet echo. She ran, turning corners blindly. The dirt under her paws grew cold and slick. She passed rooms where toys floated weightlessly. Rooms where faint crying echoed without a source. In one room, she thought she saw herself. A version of her staring back through a dusty window. But it didn't move, didn't blink. It only watched. Finally, after what felt like hours, Bluey found the trapdoor again. She scrambled out, pulling herself back into the daylight. The park was empty, silent. The sky was darker now, bruised purple and gray. Bingo sat alone on the swings, staring at the ground, silent, still. Bluey called to her. Bingo looked up and smiled, but her eyes were wrong, too wide, too dark. The episode ended with Bluey standing frozen, watching her sister swing slowly back and forth. The wind howled. The camera pulled away, rising higher and higher, showing the sandbox from above, and the dozens of small rotted trapdoors, hidden all across the ground. The screen faded to black. No music, only the low sound of something shifting, deep beneath the earth. There's a lost Bluey episode. Whispers call it Not Her Voice. It's one of those episodes you never find listed, only mentioned by those who watched late at night, when they shouldn't have. It started on a normal evening. Bluey and Bingo were getting ready for bed. Their parents tucked them in. Bandit said goodnight. Chili kissed their foreheads. The lights turned off. Soft footsteps faded down the hallway. Bluey lay there staring at the ceiling, listening to the soft sounds of the night. Then she heard it. Her mother's voice. "Bluey, come here, sweetie." Bluey smiled, half asleep. She slipped out of bed and padded down the hallway. The house was dark, colder than usual. The voice called again, closer now. "Bluey, I'm waiting." Bluey turned the corner toward the living room. But there, standing at the end of the hall, was Chili, smiling, calm, holding a cup of tea. "What are you doing up, honey?" Bluey froze. The voice had come from the opposite direction, still calling her name, software urgent, wrong. Bluey looked back. The hallway behind her stretched longer than it should have. At the far end, the outline of her mother stood, but not quite right. The shoulders too slumped, the neck too stiff. the head tilted in an unnatural way. "Bluey, come here." The real Chili stepped forward. "Sweetheart, come to me, right now." Her voice shook just a little. Bluey didn't hesitate. She ran into Chili's arms. They turned together and hurried back to the bedroom. As Chili closed the door, Bluey heard it again. A slow, scraping sound. Nails dragging along the hallway walls. Scratching. Following. That night, Bluey slept in her parents' bed, sandwiched safely between Bandit and Chili. But long after the house went silent, she kept her eyes open, listening. Just before she drifted into uneasy sleep, she heard a whisper right against the window pane. "You chose the wrong one." The final frame showed the hallway once more, empty, silent. But if you watched closely and just for a second, the shadows seemed to move, reaching, stretching, waiting. The screen faded to black, no credits, no music, only the soft sound of breathing, too close to the microphone. There's a lost Bluey episode only spoken about in hushed tones. They call it The Night Bus. It was never officially released. Only fragments of memory and a few screenshots remain. The episode began with Bluey and Bingo waiting with Bandit at a bus stop. It was already late. The sky was dark and the streetlights flickered. They were supposed to catch the last bus home. The air felt heavy, thick, as if the world was holding its breath. The bus pulled up. It looked normal, at first. Bluey and Bingo climbed aboard, waving at the driver. But he didn't wave back. He didn't even move. His face was hidden under the brim of his cap. Bandit sat with them for a few minutes, then smiled and said, "I'll see you two at home." He stepped off the bus. The doors hissed closed, and the bus pulled away. Bluey and Bingo looked out the window, but the streets didn't look right. Buildings were twisted. Street signs blurred. People on the sidewalks didn't move, they just stood, staring. The further the bus went, the darker it became. Inside the bus, the other passengers were silent, staring forward, their faces wrong, smudged, like old paintings left in the rain. Bluey squeezed Bingo's paw. "I want to go home," she whispered. The bus didn't stop, it just kept driving, faster now. The lights outside grew dimmer, and the shadows inside the bus grew longer, stretching, reaching. One figure stood up, slowly. Its arms were too long, its face an empty gaping hole. It began walking toward them, step by step. Bingo cried, Bluey shouted, "Stop the bus!" No one moved, not the driver, not the passengers. The thing came closer, its hollow face just inches away. And then, the bus jolted to a stop. Bluey grabbed Bingo's paw and ran. They pushed past the silent passengers, fell out into the street. The town was wrong, silent. The buildings loomed at odd angles. The sky was a deep choking black. No stars, no moon. Only the faint sound of footsteps. Many footsteps, approaching from all sides. They ran, down alleys, around corners. But the city twisted endlessly. No way out. The episode ended with Bluey and Bingo standing under a broken streetlight. Alone, shivering, listening to the footsteps growing louder, closer. The screen slowly faded to black. No credits, no music. Only the sound of a bus engine idling in the darkness.